So perhaps the number one value for Americans is freedom. Freedom! And the number one value for Aussies and Kiwis, New Zealanders, is probably fairness. And so in Australian lingo, there are probably 30 different expressions for fair, including fair go, fair dinkum. Dinkum comes from a Chinese expression, combination of two Chinese words about finding real gold. So fair dinkum means the real thing. Dinky die, right? That means fair, right, true, real, authentic. True blue means true, fair, right. So what the hell is the opposite of dinky die, true blue, and fair dinkum? And it came to me when I was listening to the classic John Williamson song yesterday, True Blue. And he talked about, a true blue mate will stand by you in tough times, while a mate who doesn't stand by you in tough times, he's Vegemite. So Vegemite, that salty, yeasty paste that Aussies like, and almost no one who's not Australian likes, that's the opposite of True Blue, Dinky Die, and Fair Dinkum. Anyway, I was listening to a terrific 12-step talk this morning, and the bloke said that armoring hides who we really are. And I like that. Armoring hides who we really are. So one of the potential downsides of Alexander technique is you let go of your body armoring, right? Your ingrained and unnecessary habits of muscular tension and compression is hiding who you really are, and so you become more transparent. And so we put on all sorts of personae, and we develop these character defaults, such as being angry, or being frightened, or being dishonest, to try, to survive and make our way through life. So we've learned in certain situations that lying has gotten us out of a lot of trouble. So I developed that habit very early in life because it reduced my chances of being beaten. And I didn't like being hit, particularly by my parents, and so I developed the habit of lying. But what started out as an adaptive habit when I was a little kid and didn't want to be smashed by by adults in authority. Like my dad only spanked me twice, I think, so don't get the idea that Dr. Ford was some big child beater. Man, these cars better not hit me. But what started out as an adaptive habit quickly became a maladaptive habit, and it just became my default to avoid unpleasantness, and then became my default to avoid shame. So I noticed some of us adopt anger, massive intense displays of anger to try to ward off shame. Others of us do a lot of live streams and create an online persona to try to ward off shame that we're inconsequential. Others develop the character default of dishonesty. But these are all forms of armoring. These are all defaults, personae that we put on and become second nature to try to ward off shame, try to ward off being really known for who we really are. And you also see this with a lot of thought leaders and gurus, right? They've created this false, all-knowing personae that they can wrap a tapestry of meaning over the world, to use the terminology of Australian psychology professor Matthew Brown, one of the co-hosts of Decoding the Gurus. And they seem to have this preternatural levels of self-confidence to ward off these feelings of shame, but at the same time they present this, I'm a victim, I'm being victimized, I'm being suppressed, the dark forces of the elites of YouTube, of Twitter, the dreaded algorithm, the Anti-Defamation League. They're holding me down, they're restricting my views. So Dennis Prager, who boasts about 6-7 billion views for Prager University on YouTube, can simultaneously feel oppressed and censored by YouTube. So despite his 6 billion views, right, he sues YouTube for suppressing and censoring him. So armoring are all these false, inauthentic character defaults that we put on, these false personae. And every character default, every emotion we have, every mode of thinking also requires a certain alignment of the musculature. So certain alignments of the musculature, like the head retracting back, the neck tightening, the shoulders rising up, right? Moving in that fight or flight position like a boxer, right? That may make you feel more defended, and in certain circumstances that may well be adaptive in a boxing match, but generally speaking, being in fight and flight does not serve you. So it's a little bit scary letting go of these unnecessary patterns of muscular tension, because we know ourselves by our habitual tension levels. Like, we've developed these habits of tension, right, to ward off insecurity and pain, and to try to make ourselves feel safer, and to ward off vulnerability and shame. And they've become second nature, and so we've come to know ourselves by these layers of unnecessary muscular tension and these personae. And so we avoid often feeling vulnerable or allowing ourselves to be in free, open, physical alignment, because we've become so afraid of the outside world. And what started out as an adaptive practice quickly becomes maladaptive. So when we start letting go of these layers of unnecessary tension, when we start letting go of these false personae, these maladaptive character defaults of dishonesty, unnecessary anger, building up a false self, right? We don't know who we are, because these false habits of armoring, body armoring, personae armoring, psychological armoring, putting on a false self, have just become so habitual that without them, we may feel absolutely lost. We have to kind of step into an unknown world. Like, the only way we can understand anything is by analogizing it to something we do understand. So many people, when they try to understand the Alexander technique, they compare it to something they do understand, like a trainer at the gym or yoga. In reality, it's nothing like that. But how on earth can you convey to people that the Alexander technique is a method of noticing how you habitually respond to stimuli and let go of those stimuli responses that don't serve you, that it's a method for subtracting responses to stimuli that don't serve you, right? There's no normal language for that kind of approach, so it's really hard to offer that to people when it's completely outside of everything that they know. You have to step into an unknown world. And I needed about 2 years of Alexander technique before I became open, for example, to 12-step programs. Before that, I just always thought they were really stupid. And I needed like 18 months of Alexander technique intense teacher training before I started using terminology like being kind to myself. And I finally started to inculcate and understand and empathize with what my therapist had been telling me for like 15 years, to try to be a good friend to myself. I had to let go of that amount of body armoring and unnecessary muscular tension, and with it go all sorts of habitual patterns of mind and patterns of feeling and patterns of personae and character defaults that were not serving me.